merci de vous joindre à cette conversation dont le thème est, je le rappelle, surmonter les défis de l'intégration commerciale régionale, quelles solutions pour l'Afrique? Nous sommes ravis pour votre participation. Depuis plusieurs décennies, vous le savez, les leaders et peuples africains ont exprimé le besoin de renforcer la coopération entre leurs États. Ces derniers avaient en effet pris conscience des enjeux et des opportunités d'une intégration régionale effective. Mais leurs ambitions se sont au fil du temps traduites par une prolifération d'accords régionaux. Ces accords sont aujourd'hui plus nombreux en Afrique que sur tout autre continent, certains pays participant à plusieurs initiatives d'intégration régionale. Considérant les différents chevauchements qui existent, on se pose finalement la question de savoir si le coût de l'intégration régionale ne finirait pas par absorber ses avantages pour ce continent qui abrite pratiquement tous les pays en développement. Néanmoins, les chefs d'État africains sont parvenus récemment à un accord historique établissant la zone de libre-échange continentale en adéquation avec l'agenda 2063 de l'Afrique que nous voulons une Afrique unie, intégrée et prospère. De nombreuses études pour diverses régions se sont attachées à évaluer les progrès réalisés par l'Afrique en matière d'intégration régionale. Certaines ont abordé la question en termes de gains pour le commerce des biens, tandis que d'autres se sont concentrées spécifiquement sur les aspects institutionnels de l'intégration. L'Union africaine, en ce qui la concerne, a développé au fil du temps, en collaboration avec les communautés économiques régionales et plusieurs autres organisations africaines, un certain nombre d'outils et d'indicateurs pour évaluer les progrès de l'intégration régionale en Afrique. Ce soir, à partir de ces indicateurs, nous voulons faire la lumière sur les progrès réalisés par l'Afrique en matière d'intégration régionale, les difficultés qui demeurent ainsi que les stratégies qui devraient être mises en place pour faciliter le commerce intra-africain au cours des 10 prochaines années. Pour en discuter, nous avons le privilège d'avoir avec nous cet après-midi un expert du domaine, un professionnel dont les connaissances et l'expérience ne sont plus à démontrer. Permettez-moi de le nommer, le docteur Francis Kendi Ikome. Le docteur Francis Kendi Ikome est le chef de la section de l'intégration régionale de la division de l'intégration régionale et du commerce à la Commission économique pour l'Afrique, chargé de diriger les travaux dans plusieurs domaines stratégiques, dans le domaine stratégique de l'intégration régionale, y compris entre autres les tâches relatives à la coordination de la préparation de produits phares du savoir, tels que l'évaluation de l'intégration régionale en Afrique, la direction des travaux de mise en œuvre du cadre pour la dynamisation du commerce intra-africain, la libre circulation des personnes et ses implications sur le commerce et l'intégration en Afrique, les travaux sur l'approfondissement de l'intégration africaine en vue d'une union douanière et d'un marché commun à l'échelle du continent. Il est également le coordonnateur de plusieurs commissions au sein de la Commission économique pour l'Afrique, des Nations unies pour l'Afrique, et facilitateur du travail de la Commission sur l'initiative pharmaceutique ancrée sur la ZENCA, la zone de libre-échange continentale africaine. Dr Ikome a autrefois occupé plusieurs postes au sein de la CEA. Il a été, entre autres, chef de la section de la gouvernance et de la gestion du secteur public à la division de la politique macroéconomique, responsable principal de la gestion des programmes au bureau du secrétaire exécutif adjoint. Il a été conseiller technique au bureau d'appui au secrétariat adjoint de la Commission de l'Union africaine, de la CEA et de la Banque africaine de développement. Il a été responsable de la gouvernance et de l'administration publique à l'ancienne division de la gouvernance de l'administration publique de la CEA. Bien avant de rejoindre la CEA, il convient de le rappeler, et pendant plus de 12 ans, il a travaillé comme universitaire, chercheur et directeur de programme. Il a été précisément chef de programme de prévention des conflits africains à l'Institut d'études de sécurité et directeur des programmes à l'Institut pour le dialogue mondial. Dr Ikome est spécialiste des questions d'économie politique comparée et auteur de plusieurs publications présentées à diverses et prestigieuses conférences internationales. Merci beaucoup, Dr Ikome, de nous honorer de votre présence. Le Carrefour Policy Institute se réjouit de vous avoir avec nous cet après-midi. Merci de nous accorder votre précieux temps.
Thanks very much, Dr. Kwam. And let me preface my intervention by extending my sincere appreciation to the Carrefour Institute for this opportunity for us to have this conversation around a topic as important as this one. The ECA probably, I would want to imagine that you and your colleagues are fully aware of what the ECA is. I think the ECA is rightfully known as one of actually the very first development institution on the continent, the first regional commission established by the UN back in 1958. So it's the oldest development institution in the continental landscape, and it has continued to accompany African countries in their development, and more specifically with regards to issues relating to regional integration. So it's a huge pleasure being here to have this conversation. And thanks once more, both from myself personally and from the leadership and staff of the ECA. We look forward to continuing the engagement because we are first and foremost a think tank, and engaging other think tanks is a priority for us. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Merci, nous vous en prions, docteur. Et avant de commencer notre conversation, permettez-moi de rappeler à nos participants à travers l'Afrique, le monde, tout au long de cet événement, ils auront la possibilité également de vous poser directement leurs questions sur l'intégration commerciale ou l'intégration régionale en Afrique. Il suffira juste, chers participants, de lever votre main et notre merveilleuse équipe de communication vous permettra de vous exprimer. Vous êtes également invité à laisser votre question dans la boîte de discussion. Docteur Ikome, au fil des années, divers instruments et outils ont été conçus par certaines institutions et organisations africaines pour mesurer les progrès réalisés par le continent en matière d'intégration. On cite notamment l'indice d'intégration régionale africaine IRA, publié conjointement par l'Union africaine, la Banque africaine de développement et la Commission économique pour les Nations unies pour l'Afrique. On note également l'indice d'intégration multidimensionnelle en Afrique, AMRI, conçu par l'Union africaine en collaboration avec les communautés économiques régionales, l'Association des banques centrales africaines et les agences statistiques de développement, ainsi que l'indice d'ouverture du visa pour l'Afrique développé par la Banque africaine de développement. Le plus surprenant est que ces différents outils donnent des résultats curieusement variés et mitigés sur les principales dimensions de l'intégration régionale. On peut citer notamment l'intégration commerciale, productive, infrastructurelle, macroéconomique et la libre circulation des personnes. Dans ce contexte, et d'après vous, où en est-on véritablement avec le processus d'intégration en Afrique?
Thanks very much. As you rightly indicated in your opening statement, it's common knowledge that regional integration and cooperation has been a permanent feature in Africa's development thinking and practice. So Africa has experimented with diverse forms and shades of regional integration initiatives. And it is largely been in response to the reality that the continent has faced from the very early days of independence, namely that it is a very fragmented continent with very small states, small population sizes and markets that ordinarily and standing alone on their own would not be competitive. Both internally and globally. So regional integration, as we know, is important and has been important for all regions of the world. But it would not be wrong to assert that it's been even more important for Africa than other regions because of the colonial legacy of fragmentation. So over the years, lots of initiatives have been tabled and experimented with. The integration processes in the continent have not been stagnant or uniform. They've continued to evolve, and they have been dynamic. And they've been shaped by circumstances, both internal and external. Internally, like I said, there are the market issues, market size and stuff, and things like that. But externally also, they've been global dynamics. So at various stages, various periods rather, in history, they've been very defining moments in Africa's integration. Going back to the 60s, you would have the desire to have a united continent. That's the strong impulses of Pan-Africanism, which dictated that the continent would prioritize integration as a united states, both political and economic. But realities kind of neutralized this ambition and very little was realized, even with the establishment of the OAU then. The second phase was the one that emphasized sub-regional dimensions, to say, let us start on a small scale and then build on that to get to the continental ambition. And one of the defining initiatives during this period was the famous Lagos Plan of Action and its implementation instrument, the Full Act of Lagos. Unfortunately, again, global forces, i.e. the interpretation that were introduced on the continent by the Bretton Woods institution that suggested that Africa's problems came from within, and they brought what we call the Berg Report, and then structural adjustment programs followed later. And this curtailed the Lagos Plan of Action, and it did not go far. Subsequently, we had in the early 1990s, Africa did not drop the ball. They established the Abuja Treaty, which prescribed the establishment of an African Economic Community. As a matter of fact, if we were to talk about Africa's integration history, the Abuja Treaty is one of the most important and lasting legacies. It still defines and shapes Africa's integration processes. And if you ask the question as to where we find ourselves in the integration journey, I would want to start the journey, us to start this journey from the Abuja Treaty and the prescriptions that it made. It revived the prescriptions of the Lagos Plan of Action. It talked about, it was to be implemented in phases. I think there were about 5 or 6 main phases for the implementation of the Abuja Treaty. But what is most significant about the Abuja Treaty is that it anchored the continental integration agenda on the successes of regional economic communities. And the fortunes of regional economic communities, many of them were established, some were in existence even before the Abuja Treaty. The fortunes have been very mixed. Progress has varied from rec to rec. Many people have been dismissive of the progress that recs have made, but my take is that I always like to look at the progress on regional integration on the continent as being a glass half full, as opposed to a glass half empty. So there's been progress that has been made in the regional integration efforts. It has been slow. The pace should have been faster, and it has not lived up to the expectations of the ordinary man and woman on the continent. But we cannot dismiss the progress that has been made. The recs have been, like I said, they've made there are different stages of integration, and the continent adopted the linear pattern of integration. That required that they will move from preferential free trade areas to free trade, preferential trade areas to free trade areas, customs union, the single market, and subsequently an economic community and even a financial union. Various REX treaties make provisions, and they had well-defined timelines for meeting these targets. Unfortunately, majority of them did not live up to this expectation. And therefore, the transformative power of regional integration on the continent has not really materialized. The African leaders have not rested on their laurels. They've continued to articulate and put in place initiatives intended to accelerate the regional integration. Some of these, you also remember there's been the, for instance, the framework for boosting inter-African trade. You have the minimum integration framework. You have the transition from the OAU to the AU, a commission, and then you have Agenda 2063, which is more embracing development framework. But most critically, and in recent history, one of the most defining moments in Africa's integration processes or agenda or journey has been the establishment of the African Continental Free Trade Area. It's been a defining moment, and it is a game changer. If fully implemented, it is transformative in nature, it is wide in scope, it is beyond conventional free trade agreements because it touches on areas and issues that have implications for internal trade policy making. For the moment, when you ask about the moment, what I think about integration, I think, again, I repeat, the AFCFTA is a game changer. It is redefining the integration agenda. It has brought a new momentum in Africa's integration processes. Thank you.
Oui, merci beaucoup, docteur Ikome. Vous avez évoqué tout à l'heure le traité d'Abuja. Vous avez également le plan d'action de Lagos. Après, vous avez évoqué le traité d'Abuja. Mais vous convenez avec moi qu'avant la mise en place de la zone de libre-échange continentale africaine, nous avions entre 1960 et 1980 plus de 200 initiatives intergouvernementales de coopération économique multisectorielle et plus de 120 initiatives bilatérales et multinationales pour des secteurs uniques. Et donc, nous avons fait des progrès significatifs, comme vous avez mentionné. Nous sommes aujourd'hui à la zone de libre-échange continentale africaine. Mais la question que j'ai envie de vous poser, c'est de savoir, pensez-vous que nous sommes véritablement sur la bonne voie avec une intégration économique en Afrique, une intégration effective? Pensez-vous qu'avec la zone de libre-échange continentale africaine, nous sommes sur la meilleure voie?
Yes, I would answer positively, and it's a strong positive response. If you look at the speed and dispatch with which the AFCFTA came into being, one would say it has been unprecedented. The processes or negotiations, first the conversation started in 2012, where the directives from an AU summit gave marching orders for the establishment of an African free trade area, alongside putting into place a framework for free movement of people. Negotiations started in 2015 and went through by 2018 when this treaty was signed. It was signed by 54 out of the 55 member states that constitute the African Union. That is unprecedented. And it took just a couple of months or less than a year or thereabout for it to get the requisite ratifications and for it to go into force. And the implementation effectively started with trading beginning in February 2021. So in terms of political will and the support from various stakeholders and actors, I think the AFCFTA is unprecedented. But the one reality, and you indicated very clearly that the continent has faced, is that it has been very good at putting initiatives, establishing institutions, but it has failed rather woefully when it comes to implementation. So the biggest fear that many people have and political observers have is the fear that the AFCFTA should not go the route of earlier initiatives. But there are elements on the ground that seem to suggest that this time around, it is likely that it would be different, and that the AFCFTA would be implemented effectively. And various stakeholders, including the ECA itself, have been hard at work to provide all the support that is needed to ensure that the AFCFTA is implemented. ECA has been helping member states in developing AFCFTA implementation strategies. Some of them have, we have about 43 or 46 AFCFTA strategies that have been developed. Some have already are already at the implementation phase. So the fact that there is this deliberate and conscious effort to accompany member states in the implementation reflects the awareness that implementation or failure thereof has been the bane of African integration over the years.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup, Dr. Ikome. Nous voulons saluer ici l'Union africaine, tous les efforts que l'Union africaine a déployés pour la mise en place de la zone de libre-échange continental africain et nous avons plein espoir que cette zone contribuera, comme vous le savez, vous convenez à la prospérité, vous convenez avec moi que l'intégration régionale est un catalyseur de la prospérité à long terme et on vous l'entend bien dit. Ce processus est bien en cours, vous l'avez mentionné, depuis des années, des décennies, mais les résultats visés sont encore loin d'être atteints. Vous avez tout à l'heure bien souligné que les progrès sont restés faibles. La plupart des organisations et institutions évaluant le niveau de l'intégration régionale en Afrique s'accordent bien à nous dire que l'intégration reste faible. L'Union africaine a récemment mis en place un certain nombre d'indicateurs, un certain nombre de projets, visant à renforcer l'intégration régionale sur le continent. Encore faudra-t-il parvenir à surmonter les obstacles qui subsistent. À votre avis, docteur Ikoné, quels sont ces facteurs qui entravent l'intégration régionale en Afrique et que peut-on faire pour améliorer les performances des autres pays, les pays qui sont encore en retard? Vous convenez que 54 pays ont signé l'accord sur la zone de libre-échange, mais seulement 46 l'ont ratifié. À ce jour, il y a un État qui n'a pas encore signé carrément l'accord sur la zone de libre-échange. Quels sont ces facteurs? Comment faire pour améliorer les performances des États pour que tous suivent le même pas? Partagez-vous aussi l'idée selon laquelle la libre circulation des personnes au centre de l'intégration permettrait d'améliorer les choses?
No, thanks very much. I mean, the issue of the disconnect or mismatch between the initiatives that are in place and the results is a common knowledge, and it's been very disturbing for stakeholders, including the ordinary African man and woman who would want to see regional integration bring about a change in their lives. This has not happened, even though there's been some progress, significant progress, but the pace has been slow, like I said. There's a constellation of factors that have contributed to this reality. And going back to the one we started with, there's this gap between the signing of agreements and implementation. This it's something that needs to be attended to with the seriousness that it deserves. At some points, one may be tempted to say agreements are signed with ease because there are no consequences if you don't implement. There is that disconnect, and the disconnect is explained itself by by a number of factors, some including unrealistic and even unfeasible goals and objectives and deadlines. So you set deadlines that are unrealistic. There are also challenges around a lack of appropriate institutions to support the implementation of processes. There are issues regarding resources, human and material. Integration has dividends, but it also requires investments in terms of putting the human and financial resources to support implementation. Critically, though, there is also the issue, which is known by everybody, regarding the issues or challenges posed by the multiplicity of regional integration initiatives on the continent and their overlapping mandates and the costs this overlaps and duplication brings to the continent, and as well as the inefficiencies that this breed. This has been a focus of research and analysis and policy interventions, but the concrete solutions have not really been found, even with efforts such as the rationalization of REX, wherein, as you know, the AU recognizes only 7 regional economic communities. I think one would argue that probably there is need for further rationalization, which was contemplated not long ago by the ongoing effort for the tripartite initiative between the East African Community, the Common Market of Eastern and Southern Africa, and SADC, the Southern African Development Community. There are also challenges around the difficulty of reconciling regional and continental levels of integration processes. You have RECs that are integrating, that are supposed to be the building blocks of the continental agenda. But these RECs have their own treaties. They have their own agent. They are agents. They have agencies of their own. They have legal frameworks and so on and so forth. So the interface between the continental and the regional integration agenda has also been a contributory factor in the inefficiencies or ineffectiveness of regional integration on the continent. Importantly, also, there are challenges around the lack of complementarities among regional partners within regional economic communities. Historically, the continent has just been specialized in primary goods and commodities, actually. It's what, for the lack of a better expression, it's just dig and export, no value addition. So practically almost every country was seen to be producing the same commodity. So the integration cannot happen under those circumstances. There's need for value addition, there's need for diversification to bring about internal competitiveness that would deepen integration. Then most importantly, probably, is the issue of weak and poor infrastructure. Africa is the least connected continent. Using all the modes, if you consider all the modes of communication, rather, of all the diverse forms of infrastructure, whether you're talking roads, rails, ports, airports, energy, telecommunication, Africa lags behind compared to other regions. And this has been a factor in stalling integration. You need a good infrastructure to be able to properly integrate. There's also issues of economic disparity. The African states, in as much as majority of them are developing states or least developing states, they are not at the same level of development. And this too creates a problem of suspicion of dominance, that the more economically viable countries could dominate the weaker ones. And that has been a source of reluctance for genuine integration. A key example is the reluctance for African states to embrace the free movement of people, which is a critical requirement for integration. So these are some of the issues that need to be addressed or that contribute to the low levels of integration. In terms of responses, I think there are several interventions which are already ongoing. Like I said, the AFCFTA itself is a response. It constitutes a form of leapfrogging of the integration processes on the continent. But critically, there is need to match the establishment of institutions, the adoption of resolutions with a determination to implement, and not just verbal determination, but determination backed by resources, human and material. So that is very important. There's need for capacity building because many of the institutions that that have been established on the continent are under-resourced, they are under-financed. So there is need to put first the capacity. People need to get the requisite skills to be able to run these institutions and to push the integration and development agenda forward. There's the need, imperative, there's an imperative to push and promote economic diversification, value addition and industrialization on the continent. If you are talking about the AFCFTA, you cannot have a successful trade agreement if you don't have anything to sell. So Africa needs to diversify. Africa needs to produce to be able to leverage the enormous opportunities that the AFCFTA has provided, or that the AFCFTA opens to the continent. There's also a need to kind of have a serious look at the governance structures and patterns of the secretariats of regional integration institutions to see if the secretariats can be sufficiently empowered In other words, there's need to contemplate moving from the high emphasis on intergovernmentalism to some form of supranationalism, where member states' interests do not continue to be the prime consideration in what happens or does not happen in these integration initiatives. There's need to also review and strengthen the nexus between the continental and regional integration agenda. They need to work in sync. So that is important. There are provisions, including in the Abuja Treaty, which seem to suggest that at some point the regional communities would merge and become part of the African Economic Community when and if it becomes established. But if you look at the treaties of many regional economic communities, with the exception of COMESA, this particular provision is not inbuilt. So there's need to strengthen this. Then most, probably even more importantly, is the peace and security governance nexus on the continent. You cannot aspire to have integration and development in a conflict-infested environment. So Africa must get its governance, its peace and security equation right for it to successfully and meaningfully integrate. So those are some of the issues. Then infrastructure is key. We need to develop the infrastructure for integration to happen. There are efforts. The continent has an infrastructure framework, the program on infrastructure development. It needs to be implemented with greater forcefulness and determination. For it is the one initiative that would fundamentally alter the dynamics of development and integration on the continent. Yeah. Then I think you spoke about the free movement of persons.
Yes, please.
Yes, yeah. This is a critical component of integration. As a matter of fact, the various integration initiatives, and especially the African Continental Free Trade Area, it is not an integration of markets alone. It is an integration of markets and people. So you cannot emphasize or promote one and leave the other behind. But the reality we faced on the ground is that while there's been much enthusiasm in embracing market integration, African states appear to be reluctant to embrace the integration of African people. Yet goods and services do not sell themselves. They have to be sold by people. They have to be produced by people. So whether you're talking about investments or manufacturing or industrialization, people have to do this. So you need to encourage a free movement of people. There is the protocol on free movement, which was adopted at the same time as the AFCFTA. But the AFCFTA, as I indicated, was ratified with speed and dispatch. But the free movement protocol has had only 4 ratifications up to this point. The continent needs to do something. They need to invest the political will and resources to ensure that this protocol is ratified so that it would accompany the implementation of the AFCFTA. The AFCFTA would face enormous challenges if the protocol on free movement is not ratified, if African people are not allowed to travel freely. We've had very unpleasant experiences in recent days that I did not want to refer to, where Africans are chased out of other African countries because they are seen as liabilities. And there's a whole range of opportunities that come with free movement, including the fact that it would itself contribute significantly to integration. It would contribute to industrialization. It would contribute to transfer of technology. And it is also a source of resource mobilization. If you consider what the diaspora sends back to their respective countries as remittances, and their contribution in the host economies themselves. So there are lots of benefits that come with free movement as an integrative force. But there are concerns too as to why some countries are reluctant. There is, for instance, what is now popularly known as the securitization of free movement, where free movement is seen as a conduit for insecurity and instability. But experiences in ECOWAS, for instance, where there is openness, show that it is not necessarily the case. There are also issues of fear of competition, where the migrant is seen as a threat to the locals over jobs and job opportunities. And so on. So the issues are many, let me just leave it at that at this point.
Yes, thank you. Merci beaucoup, Dr. Ekome. Merci de relever tous ces obstacles. Et nous sommes en train de travailler, vous êtes en train de travailler à la Commission des Nations Unies pour l'économie des Nations Unies pour l'Afrique là-dessus. Nous également, au CAFO Policy Institute, nous travaillons là-dessus. Et des plateformes comme celle-ci nous offrent de faire des recommandations pertinentes pour pouvoir relever ces problèmes. Certains experts estiment, soutiennent l'idée selon laquelle l'intégration régionale offre à l'Afrique un cadre lui permettant de surmonter ces obstacles au commerce que vous avez énumérés et que la suppression de ces obstacles favoriserait même la création des marchés régionaux, dont la zone de libre-échange continentale africaine dont vous avez fait allusion longuement depuis le début de cette conversation. D'autres estiment en revanche que l'intégration régionale ne peut pas être réalisée simplement en supprimant les barrières tarifaires. Donc, nous sommes dans un contexte de zone de libre-échange continentale où il faut supprimer d'ici 2035 90% des barrières tarifaires, mais il y a des auteurs qui estiment que l'intégration régionale ne résulte pas seulement à supprimer les barrières tarifaires, les barrières commerciales, mais nécessitera davantage également des politiques pour favoriser l'industrie et la création d'emplois. Je pense que vous avez évoqué là-dessus. Est-ce que vous pouvez encore revenir un tout petit instant là-dessus? Est-ce que vous pensez véritablement que l'intégration régionale ne repose pas seulement sur la suppression des barrières commerciales?
You were apt in the way you captured the issue. The regional integration and the AFCFTA in particular is not just about trade barriers, removing barriers. It's like I said, it's a free trade agreement, unlike others, because it moves deeper away from what we call shallow integration into deep integration, because it touches on critical across the border issues that need to be addressed for us to really have the free movement of goods and services beyond tariffs. The AFCFTA, as you know, has as objective to harmonize the trade regimes. Okay, there are many trade regimes. It has as one goal to harmonize the trade regimes so that we don't have this multiplicity. But critically, it is also an agreement that pushes for industrialization, for diversification, okay, and for competitiveness. It has as objective to make the African economies competitive amongst themselves, that's within, but also to get to a stage where they will be able to compete favorably in the global arena. Because, I mean, we are living in an open global economy. So it is not an agreement that is intended to close Africa up to the rest of the world, but it opens a market space of 1.4 billion people that where production can happen. One of the one of the issues that have been raised in the past, why certain industries, including, for instance, the pharmaceutical industry, could not locate or be located in the African continent, was the lack of economies of scale. The AFCFTA has killed that debate. It has settled that discussion. We have a wide enough market space for investment in pharmaceutical and other sectors. We have not just the space, but the market population, market size in terms of who can purchase. So investors both local and international have no argument not to invest in the continent. So that is why that is one of the reasons why many see and characterize the AFCFTA as a game changer.
Okay. Merci beaucoup, Dr. Ikome. Chers participants, vous avez également la possibilité de poser vos questions au Dr. Ikome qui est là pour répondre à toutes vos préoccupations. Vous pouvez lever votre main et notre merveilleuse équipe de communication vous permettra de vous exprimer, de poser votre question. Si vous voulez également, vous pouvez juste la laisser dans la boîte de discussion. Nous allons la recueillir et la poser directement au Dr. Ikome. Dr. Ikome, nous avons longuement parlé de la zone de libre-échange continentale africaine. Peut-être faudrait-il encore le rappeler, l'accord sur la CECA a été mis en place en œuvre le 1er janvier 2021 et il y a pour objectif la création d'un marché unique des biens et services facilité par la circulation des personnes afin d'approfondir l'intégration économique du continent africain, la création d'un marché libéralisé des biens et services par des cycles successifs de négociations. La zone de libre-échange également vise à contribuer à la circulation des capitaux et des personnes physiques et à la facilitation des investissements en s'appuyant sur les initiatives et les développements des États membres et des communautés économiques régionales. On espère donc que la mise en œuvre de la zone de libre-échange contribuera à réduire les hétérogénéités. Comme vous l'avez bien mentionné tout à l'heure, depuis le début de cette conversation, on espère vraiment que la mise en œuvre de la zone de libre-échange contribuera à réduire les disparités économiques et structurelles qui existent entre les pays, qui présentent aujourd'hui des scores très différents selon toutes les dimensions de l'intégration régionale. Je nomme ici l'intégration macroéconomique, l'intégration infrastructurelle, l'intégration productive, l'intégration, la libre circulation des personnes, l'intégration commerciale. Voilà, donc les États présentent encore des scores différents et nous pensons qu'avec la ZLK, on pourra certainement remonter la pente. Pensez-vous, comme moi, que la zone de libre-échange offre véritablement aux communautés économiques régionales africaines les moyens de renforcer l'intégration parce que vous savez, nous avons 8 communautés économiques régionales qui sont reconnues par l'Union africaine, mais quand nous essayons d'examiner les indicateurs IRA et AMRI qui ont été mis en place pour évaluer les scores, et il y a vraiment des disparités. Mais est-ce que vous et très récemment, dans le AMRI et même de ARI, récemment, on a intégré le score ZLK. Est-ce que vous pensez que la zone de libre-échange va améliorer les scores des pays, des communautés économiques régionales, ou alors est-ce que vous estimez que la zone de libre-échange est l'étape ultime qui devrait conduire l'Afrique vers une véritable intégration économique?
Thanks very much. The interface between the AFCFTA and REX, and more specifically REX free trade areas, has been a focus of discussion and research. And the ECA has done some work on that and continues to do that because we are of the opinion or view that we need to get this relationship right for the AFCFTA to be very successful. If you went to the ECA website, you will find a publication labeled Governing the Interface Between the AFCFTA and REX Free Trade Areas. So it attends to specifically this particular issue. The AFCFTA is actually, like I said, I think a few minutes ago, is intended to kind of bring some coordination and harmonization of the multiple trade regimes that exist on the continent. Multiple trade regimes that have not been efficient enough. But like I indicated, there's also a recognition that when it comes to integration and trade integration in particular, regional economic communities have some of them have made significant progress on which the AFCFTA may need to build. So there is an expectation that there will be a kind of symbiotic relationship, a two-way traffic between the AFCFTA and REX. There is actually a provision, there's a framework established by the African Union to govern the relationship between the AFCFTA and regional economic communities. The AFCFTA indeed, like I said in the beginning, is a defining milestone in the integration process. It is a defining milestone. It is a game changer, and it offers opportunities for REX. And for your information, even the negotiations that led ultimately to the establishment of the AFCFTA, the negotiators tapped a lot from what already exists on the ground, the progress that REX have achieved. And there's a provision in the AFCFTA that sets out to manage this relationship. It is saying where REX have made a significant progress in certain aspects or dimensions of integration, those achievements would be retained in its relationship with the continental integration agenda. So there is that. And if you look at the regional economic communities, yes, they offer big markets compared to individual African countries' markets. But if you were to compare the market size of our various RECs to the continental market, you realize that the continental market is bigger and therefore offers greater opportunities. So the RECs stand to gain by leveraging the platforms and opportunities and institutions that the AFCFTA offers. And if they are to serve as the building blocks that they were envisaged to be under the Abuja Treaty, then they have to work in close collaboration with the AFCFTA dispensation so that we get to that ultimate journey of an African economic community, which the Abuja Treaty provides for.
Merci beaucoup, Dr. Ikome. Nous n'avons pas encore enregistré une question ou alors une intervention de la participation, mais nous sommes en train de sortir de notre conversation et nous allons pas trop tarder, nous allons poser maintenant un arrêt sur les recommandations. Quelles sont certaines recommandations des politiques économiques pour surmonter les défis de l'intégration régionale que vous avez énumérés aujourd'hui? Comment, selon vous, les gouvernements africains peuvent-ils surmonter ces obstacles à l'intégration? Vous l'avez certainement dit, peut-être vous allez le résumer, les obstacles à l'intégration régionale et tirer profit de la zone de libre-échange continentale africaine. Pourquoi? Parce qu'il y a un certain nombre d'obstacles et nous voulons tous tirer profit de la zone de libre-échange africaine. Qu'est-ce que vous, en tant que praticien de terrain, praticien, vous recommandez aux États? Ça, c'est la première question que je vous pose dans cette rubrique de recommandations. Et quelles sont les propositions de politique économique qui peuvent être formulées aux États pour conquérir des marchés à fort potentiel? Vous convenez avec moi qu'il y a des petits marchés, il y a des grands marchés et nous sommes dans un marché continental. Nous sommes en train de promouvoir un marché continental. Il y a des petits marchés, il y a des grands marchés. Qu'est-ce que les gouvernements peuvent faire? Qu'est-ce que les États peuvent faire pour promouvoir, pour conquérir des grands marchés, les marchés à fort potentiel dans le cadre de la zone de libre-échange continentale? Monsieur le docteur, vous avez la parole.
Well, there are lots of interventions that may need to be taken, but I think if you are aware of the framework on boosting inter-African trade, it has 7 priority interventions which need to be acted upon to accompany the AFCFTA and to make African economies sufficiently competitive and more amenable to meaningful and transformative integration. You have issues of trade facilitation. Like you said, we started the conversation and we agree that the AFCFTA is not just about removing tariffs. There are a host of non-tariff barriers or blockages that kind of serve as obstacles to the free movement of goods and services and people. So there is need to purposefully and deliberately focus on addressing this. There are issues, for instance, relating to harmonizing and simplifying and also automating custom procedures, for instance, and operations of regional economic communities. It's nice to harmonize, it's nice to automate. We are living in a different age. If you want to be competitive, you must go digital. And so on and so forth. There's also the need for, there are too many border posts, especially when you factor in landlocked countries. You know, we have 32 in the world, and 16 of them are on the continent. And many of them, for them to get goods from countries, coastal countries, to the hinterland where they have so many border posts to cross. So there's also the need to consider and deepen. There are already ongoing efforts on the establishment of one stop border posts where you control, they do controls and you get a certificate and you can travel across countries with that and it is recognized. It oils trade and reduces the burden and costs to business operators. Then there's critically the need to develop policies that would enhance and strengthen Africa's productive capacity, and also the development of value chains, regional value chains that would feed into global value chains. Africa enters the value chain at the bottom rungs as exporters of commodities with no value addition. So we need to rethink that and add value to our commodities. We need to develop productive capacities. Africa needs to industrialize. It needs to embark on commodity-based industrialization. Since we have so much in terms of commodities, we need to add value, transform these commodities so that, and this would create jobs. It would give us, and the producers will get more value for the goods that we, there's also the issue of infrastructure, regional infrastructure. Our countries are not sufficiently interconnected. It is true that there's a challenge internally, nationally, we don't have enough infrastructure, but the situation is even worse when you consider a connection between and amongst African countries. There are plans. We have the program on infrastructure development in Africa, which has been under implementation for the past several years, but which has not gone far enough because of missing links and so on. So there's need for deliberate interventions to complete these missing links and to make the promise of PIDA come true so that it can truly support the AFCFTA. There are issues of the macroeconomic environment. We need to have a stable macroeconomic environment. The reality we face in recent months is the emergence of the debt crisis again on the continent. You cannot integrate when you are so heavily indebted. Then everybody begins to look inward. And so there are those issues. Then there are also payment system issues. Our currencies are not convertible. So we need to work on that. You cannot integrate when you have currencies that are not convertible. So the Afrexim Bank and other continental institutions are working on that to get improve on Africa's payment system. And I think that would greatly improve the regional integration project. And then critically, there's the free movement of people. We need to ratify that protocol. African people need to be allowed to move freely, to be able to do business and to foster integration. I think there was another question you asked that I seem to have forgotten. If you can remind me, then I can attend to that.
Yes, we will come to this question now. Allow me to ask you some questions from the chat box. We have a question from Dr. Dennis Moresia. He said, "Thank you, Dr. Ikome. My question is, how do we break the implementation challenge on the continent that prevent regional integration?" This question comes from Dr. Dennis Moresia. You have the floor, Dr. Ikome.
Yes, it's a question that has been asked severally, but to which answers have not been forthcoming, or appropriate answers have not been forthcoming. But I think the implementation challenge would be resolved if the failure to implement by an integrating entity, that's a member state, comes with consequences. If there is a price to pay for not integrating, then people, the member states would know and do everything to implement. It is true, not integrating has a general cost for the entire African continent, because we've remained poor, we've remained non-competitive. But if individual member states realize if the AFCFTA, for instance, becomes successful and people see tangible results, and they say, if you don't do 1, 2, 3, and you've signed up to the AFCFTA, you'll be cut off, you will not reap the benefits. There would be a change. I think part of the problem with many African institutions has been that membership has been based on belonging, geographical belonging. You become a member of a REC by the simple fact that you belong to that region. If you compare Africa's integration processes with the European Union or European integration processes, we always compare them, there's always a saying that we mimic the European integration. But that is not completely true, because the European integration, which started with the European Coal and Steel Community, okay, other members started joining because they saw results.
Yes.
So if, for instance, the AFCFTA starts producing results, then people would do everything to support and ensure that it succeeds. And if you realize that if you don't live up to the rules or within the rules stipulated by the AFCFTA, there would be something that could be withdrawn from you, then you would implement so that you reap those benefits. So for me, one of the key issues has been the dividends and the sanctions or consequences of not implementing. So if we get that, if we attach consequences to non-implementation, then we would see a difference.
Merci beaucoup, Dr. Ikome, pour toutes ces réponses, toutes ces connaissances. Et il y a une question de Stéphane Atangana qui pose la question de savoir, au regard de la vitesse à laquelle les différents processus de rationalisation des communautés économiques régionales se font à travers le continent, peut-on avancer avec assurance vers la zone de libre-échange continentale africaine? Je pense que la zone de libre-échange continentale africaine a été mise en œuvre le 1er janvier. Nous sommes en train de faire des progrès significatifs. Il y a une question de docteur Omba également qui a été posée. Nous allons arrêter notre conversation ici parce que nous avons épuisé nos 1 heure. Nous vous promettons qu'un policy brief sera publié à l'issue de cette conversation. Et également, notre prochain numéro de On Policy Magazine va revenir sur toutes ces questions que nous avons présentées tout au long de cette conversation. Nous allons nous arrêter là. Merci beaucoup, Dr. Ikome, pour toutes les connaissances que vous avez partagées avec nous ce soir. Nous vous en sommes vraiment reconnaissants. Merci pour votre temps. Nous savons que votre calendrier est très, très chargé, mais vous avez honoré cet après-midi en nous accordant de votre temps. Merci également, chers participants, d'avoir pris part à cet événement. Nous espérons que vos attentes ont été comblées. Et comme je le disais tantôt, notre prochain numéro de On Policy Magazine reviendra sur les questions d'intégration régionale en Afrique dans son prochain numéro. Avant de nous quitter, permettez-moi de faire un clin d'œil au docteur Forestier qui a posé une question tout à l'heure et qui adresse d'ailleurs ses salutations les plus chaleureuses au docteur Ikome. Permettez-moi également de remercier notre équipe de communication sans laquelle nous ne pouvions pas réaliser cet événement, cette conversation cet après-midi. Merci beaucoup, docteur Ikome. Un mot de fin, certainement, un mot de sortie, et nous allons fermer la conversation. Docteur, vous avez la parole.
Je crois que c'est à moi de vous remercier et je m'excuse auprès des auditeurs que j'ai choisi à parler en anglais, mais je sais que le Cameroun est un pays bilingue et les gens ont suivi cette conversation qui a été vraiment riche. Je vous remercie pour l'opportunité qui m'a été donnée et au nom de mon nom propre et le nom de la CEA, j'encourage Camfou Institute de continuer à faire le bon travail que vous avez abouti et de continuer à poser des questions difficiles concernant non seulement l'intégration régionale, mais d'autres sujets qui portent qui ont des implications sur le développement de notre cher continent. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Ikome. We are grateful. See you soon. Dear participants, thank you so much and see you soon.